Hi, my name's Connor Cullen. I'm a lecturer in the philosophy department at Columbia University, and I love to teach, and I wanted to experiment with teaching texts that I love and care about to you, dear viewer, here on YouTube. My hope is that these videos will be helpful both to people who've not read the text in question and want a sort of systematic overview of what the key claims and arguments are, as well as for those who maybe have read the text, but realize, and I find myself in this situation often, that they've forgotten a lot of it over the course of their reading and want a kind of recap that highlights what the essential ideas are, how the arguments all hang together, and what the key takeaways are. The first text I'd like to discuss is Jenny Odell's wonderful 2018 book, How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. This text made a big splash when it came out. It was on a lot of Best Book of the Year lists, and really struck a chord with a lot of readers, myself obviously included. I think the book's power comes in part from the way in which Odell illuminatingly describes a series of problems that we all wrestle with on a day-to-day basis, shows how they're all connected with one another, and provides us with a kind of prescription for how we can, on a day-to-day basis, go about rectifying these manifold problems through transforming the ways in which we use our free time, the ways in which we do nothing, about which we'll have more to say in a bit. So it's very helpful in understanding the situation we're in and also giving us tools for transforming that situation. And this, I think, is really powerful. This combination is very powerful. So let's start with the diagnosis. First, there's our compulsive use of social media, our addiction to our phones, our binge watching, etc. The sense that there are these devices, technologies in our lives that command our attention in ways that we don't entirely like. We feel that our quality of life is in some way undermined, but we also find ourselves, at times at least, sort of helpless to resist the pull of these things. Second, it also feels that there's been a kind of breakdown at the level of our public discourse, that our public discourse is increasingly polarized, combative, superficial, untethered from the truth, even fantastical, and that this is undermining the ability of the body politic to communicate with itself, to raise problems, share information, and provide solutions to real pressing problems that we are dealing with. Third, there's the ongoing ecological catastrophe that we're all living through, connected to climate change and a whole host of other human-generated forms of environmental degradation. And we're all increasingly aware that this is a very pressing problem, but similarly we feel that, one, we brought it upon ourselves, and two, that it seems that there's something about the way in which we live our lives that makes us deeply worried about our ability to address the problem. So there are three different levels on which there's a disturbing development in our lives. Individually, in terms of this addiction to these devices and whatnot, politically, in terms of our public discourse, and also at the species level, this sort of ecological crisis that we are contending with. The fourth problem that Odell's going to be concerned with, and one which I think is the key for unlocking the deep explanation of how all these things are connected with one another, is the problem of the increasing commodification of our lives, the increasing sense that we need to maximize our productivity, optimize ourselves, build our personal brands, etc. And this is a response both to real financial precarity, the sense that many of us have that we really don't know how we're going to meet our needs in the coming years. We sort of need to constantly be preparing for losing our jobs or having to find a second job, etc. But also it's a function of more indirect developments through which a certain kind of market logic has taken over more and more domains of our lives, such that we think of everything in terms of productivity, commodification, etc. As we'll see, however, it's not just that our concerns about productivity, optimizing ourselves, etc., are increasingly salient in ways that sort of crowd out other legitimate and important concerns. It's also that even when we put those things aside and decide, oh, we're just going to have some free time, not think about that sort of stuff, those dynamics are still often in play in ways that we don't fully recognize and in ways that undermine our quality of life. And so the attention economy is going to be the way into discussing all of these issues and how they're all systematically connected. At least as compelling, of course, is Odell's claim that we can counteract all of these disturbing tendencies, all these problematic tendencies, through engaging in certain forms of doing nothing. And one of the things that I think is compelling in this text that I'm going to try to highlight over the course of my reconstruction is that I think the kinds of practices that Odell has in mind, which he's talking about doing nothing in the right way, are practices that have deep affinities with spiritual and religious practices. And I think that, like spiritual and religious practices, they are aimed at healing us and transforming us so that we can in turn subsequently heal and transform the world. And I think in this way the book is addressing a real spiritual crisis in ways that are not necessarily obvious when you first read it. And so she's not going to argue for or make the case for any like explicitly religious or spiritual practices, but I think it's there in the background and it's a really important part of this whole story. So I would like to start by talking about the cover of the book and then the title of the book. So first, the cover. What we see here are some beautiful roses. And I think there are three quick points that are worth making about this. One, in some sense, you could say the point of the book is to tell us to spend more time stopping and smelling the roses. A bit cliche, but true. Second, part of the inspiration for the book and a place in which Odell spent a lot of time thinking about and writing the book is a public rose garden in Oakland. And so this is a place that is not commodified. It's outside of the private domain. It's a public park. It's a place in which one can spend time with nature in unproductive activities. It's a form of leisure activity, going to the park, hanging out. And it's in going to the park, spending leisure time there, noticing birds and other aspects of the natural world around her, that Odell is inspired to write this text. And so this particular location is really important to the text, and I think is one of the things being invoked here in the cover. Third, this cover is it grabs your attention. It's bright, it's beautiful, you see it and you just want to look at it. And in this, the publisher is using a fairly standard technique used by people in the attention economy to grab our attention. So it uses very striking colors that we just have a sort of natural inclination to look at them and attend to them. And so the cover of this book is sort of using a standard attention economy device to grab our attention, to get us to pick up the book, to read the book, and then hopefully find a way to loosen the grip that the attention economy has on us and resist it in certain kinds of ways. So that's the cover. Now I'd like to talk about the title, and I'd like to talk about it in two parts. First, how to do nothing, and then resisting the attention economy. So the title itself is also quite striking, grabs your attention, because it seems sort of paradoxical, right? So how to, we think of various self-help books, maybe how-to manuals, all of which typically, characteristically, are oriented towards helping us to do something, and typically something that will make us more productive, make us more successful, etc. You can think of How to Win Friends and Influence People, books like that. So the title situates itself in that general genre, but the thing we're being taught to do is nothing, which is a very surprising twist on that format. So I would like first to say something about the kind of nothing that Odell is offering to teach us to do. It seems she might mean two things when she talks about doing nothing. One, it could be a literal nothing she's talking about, an absolute nothing, or it could be a relative nothing. So let's imagine you take a moment and try to do nothing. So you might close your eyes, get very still, try not to think. What you'll find, of course, is that you're still doing all kinds of things, right? So your heart's beating, you're breathing. Even if you're not seeing things in the world around you, you're hearing things, you're feeling things, you're smelling things. So you might think, reasonably enough, that as a living being, it's impossible for you to literally do nothing. So that can't be what she's after. So if she's not talking about a literal or absolute nothing, she must be talking about a relative nothing. So what do we mean by a relative nothing? In what sense can we say that someone is doing nothing in this relative sense? So imagine that you're at work, it's Friday, you had some big project you were grinding away at all week, and you might tell a coworker, you know what, I am doing nothing this weekend. And what you don't mean, of course, is that you're literally doing nothing. What you mean is that relative to the productive tasks you're typically concerned with on a day-to-day basis, you're doing nothing. You're going to do nothing productive, nothing that shows up in the lens of work and productivity as doing something. So you're not going to be answering any emails, you're not going to be working on a project, you're not going to be taking work calls, you're going to be hanging out in the yard, maybe gardening, watching TV, reading, hanging out with your kids, etc. Things like that. So here, it's not that you're literally doing nothing, but relative to some central task that tends to take up a lot of our time, that tends to be the criterion for how we ought to spend our days, you're doing nothing. So relative to what are we doing nothing? First and foremost, we're doing nothing relative to our work lives. So what she's talking about here is time away from work, free time, leisure time. But one of the particular trends she's concerned with, and this has to do with the second half of the title, is the ways in which more and more of our free time involves engaging with the attention economy. So, first off, what is the attention economy? So the attention economy is that domain of the economy that is concerned with capturing and selling human attention. So I talked earlier about the commodification of human lives. So this is one instance of that commodification tendency. So to take an important, familiar example that's going to be at the heart of Odell's concerns, if you think of Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, etc., you've got a free service, yay, and it's a free service that people find very compelling. People spend a lot of time on these platforms. They're designed to keep us on them, right? They're designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep us scrolling, to override our inclination to maybe engage in other activities. So they're free services that are addictive, that capture human attention very effectively. And then they make money off of that attention by selling advertising space to advertisers. So while we're scrolling through our feed, an advertiser pays Facebook or Instagram or whomever to put an ad in front of our face. And we're going to attend to it because it's right there and we're attending to this ad. So the attention economy is this particular domain. And so the thought is, even when we're off the clock, in the sense that we're not at work, we're still working for someone in the sense that we're working for Facebook, we're working for Instagram, we're helping them to make money by giving them our attention and allowing them to sell that to advertisers. And this is part of the reason why it's unsatisfying in the ways that it is. More on that later. One of the keys here is going to be unplugging or stepping back from these attention economy devices, disengaging from that, and taking more control over our free time, taking more control over our leisure activities. So in doing this, we can transform the things we attend to. We can take control of our attention, take it away from these platforms, redirect it to other things. And the thought is that in directing our attention elsewhere, we can tune into things that we tend to lose sight of in our work lives and when we're on social media, etc., that our society tends to lose sight of. We can tune into these things And insofar as they are deeply valuable and significant, they can be a source of support and rejuvenation. We can sort of heal through engaging with these things. So one example is going to be nature, the sort of ecosystems that surround us that we often sort of overlook and don't attend to. Works of art is going to be another example. So the thought is that in redirecting our attention off of these platforms and to these other things, we can tune into all these sources of value that we easily lose sight of. This can be restorative for us. It can help to heal us, make us feel better. It's a form of self-care, genuine self-care. What also happens through engaging in these forms of leisure is that we start to see the world differently. We start to see ourselves differently. We start to see our relationships differently. We start to understand our place in the world differently. And the thought is that when we do that, when we transform ourselves and our perspective on the world and the things we're attending to in our leisure in these ways, we return to the world seeing possibilities we didn't see before, oriented towards different values. And this generates a kind of friction that constitutes, among other things, a mode of resisting the attention economy. But it's important to note that it's not just the attention economy that's the problem. That is particularly salient here for this book, insofar as the attention economy tends to take over and deform how we use our free time. So it's of salient significance insofar as we want to combat it in order to regain control over our free time, regain certain forms of autonomy that we tend to lose insofar as we're immersed in the attention economy. But in resisting the attention economy, we ultimately have bigger goals in view. And so it's really just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a whole host of other concerns, ecological, ethical, political, etc., that we're also trying to tackle. And the place where we start to make these comprehensive transformations is in our decisions about how to do nothing.